On a serene weekend afternoon in Austin, Texas, Major Jessica Adams stepped into a small, bustling supermarket. Wearing a plain white shirt, blue jeans, and sneakers, she appeared to be just another shopper lost in the rhythm of daily life. But beneath her unassuming appearance was a woman of remarkable strength and dedication, a soldier who had spent her career leading troops with unwavering courage and precision. Before we dive into this inspiring story, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more stories of resilience, courage, and hope. For Jessica, weekends like this were precious. After a demanding week filled with challenges, these quiet moments offered her a chance to reconnect with the simplicity of life. As she walked the aisles, selecting everyday essentials, her calm presence was a stark contrast to the fierce determination she often displayed in her line of duty. But what started as an ordinary trip to the store was about to transform into an extraordinary moment that would leave an indelible mark on the community. Her peaceful errand, however, was soon disrupted by an incident that highlighted the unexpected complexities of human nature. At the end of an aisle, a tall man in a police uniform, Officer Robert Hooks, inadvertently dropped a packet of noodles and a bottle of soda. Jessica paused, watching as Robert glanced at the mess, and then walked away nonchalantly, leaving the items sprawled on the floor. The scene struck a nerve. As a soldier, Jessica had been trained to pay attention to detail and uphold accountability in all circumstances. The officer's dismissive attitude clashed sharply with those principles. Jessica stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute. "Excuse me, sir," she said. "You seem to have dropped a few things. Perhaps you could pick them up to avoid inconveniencing others." Robert turned to face her, his expression unreadable at first. Then, with a disdainful smirk, he replied, "And who are you to tell me what to do? I don't have time for trivial things like this." His tone was condescending, his words laced with arrogance. Jessica remained composed, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of disappointment. She spoke again, her voice steady and measured. "As a police officer, you have a responsibility to set an example for the community. Picking up after yourself is a simple act of respect for others and for the uniform you wear." Rather than reflect on her words, Robert's expression hardened. He crossed his arms and retorted with sarcastic disdain. His dismissive attitude only intensified the tension. What began as a minor incident had now drawn the attention of several customers, their curious and uneasy glances directed toward the unfolding confrontation. Jessica could feel the weight of those gazes, but she stood firm. Her military training had prepared her to face challenges head-on, even under the scrutiny of others. Inside, she felt a surge of anger at Robert's behavior, but she channeled it into determination. Years of leading soldiers had taught her the value of composure and decisive action in the face of conflict. Taking a deep breath, Jessica continued, her tone unwavering but calm. "This isn't a trivial matter, sir. The uniform you wear represents authority and trust. Every action you take reflects on the values of your profession. Ignoring responsibility undermines that trust." Robert's gaze darkened with contempt, but he remained rooted to the spot, refusing to concede. Jessica, undeterred, pressed on. She had faced far greater adversities than this, and knew that standing up for what was right sometimes required enduring resistance. The tension in the supermarket grew palpable as more people gathered to observe. Jessica's words had struck a chord with some, who nodded subtly in agreement, while others watched in quiet anticipation. It was a moment that revealed the stark contrast between two individuals, one committed to accountability and respect, and the other dismissive of those values. Finally, a young store employee, sensing the unease, approached the aisle. Without hesitation, he bent down to clean up the scattered items. His actions were humble yet impactful, a silent testament to the values Jessica had been advocating for. The sight caused a ripple of quiet approval among the onlookers. Jessica turned to the young man and offered a small, grateful smile. "Thank you for stepping up," she said softly. The encounter had ended, but its implications lingered in the air. Jessica walked away, her posture steady and unyielding. She knew she had done her part to uphold the principles she believed in, even if it had not swayed the officer. The experience served as a reminder of the challenges that came with standing for what is right, a lesson she carried with her as she continued her day. Ever the soldier, ever the example. The atmosphere in the supermarket grew heavier as Major Jessica Adams confronted Officer Robert Hooks. What had begun as a minor incident, a few items dropped and left behind, had escalated into a confrontation that exposed deeply rooted prejudices and attitudes. Jessica, a seasoned military officer, stood unwavering in the face of Robert's growing arrogance. Picking up something as simple as a dropped item, Jessica began, her voice measured yet firm, isn't just about responsibility as a citizen. It reflects who you are, especially when you're wearing that uniform. It's about respect, for yourself, for others, and for the role you represent. Her words, calm but pointed, were meant to inspire reflection. Yet Robert responded with a smirk, his laugh laced with mockery and arrogance. "Listen," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You think you know a lot about being a police officer, but you don't know the first thing about my job. This isn't worth worrying about. Frankly, you should mind your own business." Jessica felt the weight of the moment as curious onlookers gathered, some subtly filming the interaction on their phones. Though their attention could have been unnerving, she remained composed. Her anger was not just directed at Robert's irresponsibility. It was fueled by the injustice and prejudice she had faced as a woman of color and as a leader in her field. This wasn't just a personal slight. It was emblematic of a societal issue she had long fought against. Her expression remained resolute as she met Robert's contemptuous gaze. "You're judging the wrong person," she said, her voice calm, yet full of conviction. "You may not realize it now, but the way you're acting will have consequences. Not just for me, but for you as well." Robert smirked again, dismissing her words. He seemed confident that his position as an officer of the law made him untouchable. Yet Jessica's determination didn't waver. Beneath her calm exterior, a deep sense of anger and injustice simmered. But she wouldn't let it consume her. Years of military service had taught her the importance of remaining composed under pressure. "I'm not here to argue," Jessica continued, her tone steady yet authoritative. "I'm here to remind you that your actions don't just affect others. They reflect who you are. As a police officer, you should know your responsibilities better than anyone else." Her sharp words began to shift the atmosphere. Shoppers paused their routines to listen. Some nodded in quiet agreement, their expressions reflecting both respect for Jessica's courage and disapproval of Robert's behavior. The officer, however, chose arrogance as a shield. He laughed, the sound echoing through the supermarket aisle, his smirk growing wider. "Responsibility," he sneered. "Who do you think you are to lecture me? You're just a mediocre woman, nothing more, nothing less. Don't think you have the right to stand here and tell me what to do. You don't understand anything about my work." His words stung, their sexism and prejudice cutting deeply. But Jessica refused to let them dominate her. She took a deep breath, her resolve as strong as ever. She knew this moment was about more than herself. It was about standing firm in the face of injustice, about demonstrating the strength of true leadership versus the abuse of power. "I don't need you to understand who I am," she replied, her voice calm but weighty. "But I do need you to understand this. Every person in this society deserves respect, no matter who they are. And if you can't uphold that principle, then you don't deserve the uniform you're wearing." Her words struck a nerve, but Robert masked his discomfort with louder, more defiant laughter. His voice echoed with contempt as he spat. "What do you think you can do to me? I'm a policeman, and the law is on my side. You're just an ordinary woman of color. Know your place before you get yourself into trouble." His words were not just an insult, they were a challenge. Yet Jessica didn't falter. The tension in the supermarket was palpable, the silence almost deafening as onlookers awaited her response. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the store, their silent judgment and anticipation hanging in the air. Instead of lashing out, Jessica stood tall, her posture reflecting both her inner strength and her commitment to her principles. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about showing the difference between integrity and arrogance, about embodying the values she had dedicated her life to defending. In the stillness of the aisle, Jessica's unwavering calm spoke louder than any insult could. Her presence, resolute and commanding, was a reminder that true power lies not in the uniform one wears, but in the character one embodies. All eyes in the supermarket were fixed on Jessica Adams. Every gesture she made seemed to carry the weight of the moment. This was no longer a simple disagreement. It had transformed into a test of character, a demonstration of how calmness and determination could rise above arrogance and prejudice. Jessica stood upright, her shoulders squared as though she were preparing for battle, not on a foreign battlefield, but here, against a man wearing a police uniform. Her unwavering gaze reflected her inner strength, even as Officer Robert Hooks continued to mock and insult her. The tension in the air was palpable. The hum of casual conversations had faded into silence as customers gathered to witness the unfolding confrontation. Some held their phones up, recording the scene, while others watched with bated breath, waiting for Jessica's next move. Taking a deliberate step forward, Jessica spoke, her voice calm yet cutting. "You may think of me however you like, but arrogance and contempt for others only reveal one's moral shortcomings. I'm not here to challenge your authority, but I won't stand by and allow you to abuse it." Robert's confident smirk faltered slightly. He frowned, his composure beginning to crack under the weight of Jessica's firm resolve. He studied her, searching for signs of fear or hesitation, but all he saw was a woman who stood as solid and unyielding as a bronze statue. By now, the entire supermarket was transfixed. People stopped what they were doing, captivated by the clash of wills. Phones continued to capture every word and gesture. The silence was thick, interrupted only by the occasional shuffle of feet. Robert snarled, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Don't try to act noble in front of me," he snapped. "You're nothing but a troublemaker. If I wanted to, I could have you kicked out of here right now." Jessica's expression didn't waver. Though she didn't smile, the corners of her mouth twitched slightly, a subtle display of calm, quiet confidence. Her reply was steady, her tone carrying an undeniable weight. "If you believe your position gives you the right to behave this way, you're mistaken. And if you think I'll be intimidated, let the law decide that." The tension in the supermarket reached its peak. Two figures stood face to face, Robert, large and imposing, trying to project authority through aggression, and Jessica, smaller in stature, without a uniform, but radiating a presence that commanded respect. Her unwavering demeanor and piercing gaze were far more powerful than any badge or title. "You can continue to insult me," Jessica continued, her voice firm yet composed, "but remember, I'm not here alone. This room is filled with witnesses. And if you think you can use words to diminish me, you're wrong. I'm not standing here to defend my personal honor. I'm standing here to defend the values I've dedicated my life to." The supermarket fell into an almost sacred silence. Though no one dared to speak, their collective support for Jessica was evident in their watchful eyes. She could feel their unspoken agreement, their quiet approval of her stance. Robert, on the other hand, began to falter. While he maintained a tough exterior, his discomfort was unmistakable as he realized the situation was spiraling beyond his control. Jessica remained resolute, like a lighthouse guiding ships through a storm. Her calm in the face of injustice and prejudice was a beacon of hope for those witnessing the scene. Even as the tension mounted, she never wavered. She understood that her every word and action would resonate beyond this moment, serving as a testament to justice and integrity. Robert, however, took a step closer, his voice growing harsher and more aggressive. "I'm warning you," he said, his tone laced with threat. "Don't make this worse. I'm the police, and I have the authority to deal with you right here and now." His words echoed in the silence, but rather than intimidating Jessica, they only solidified her resolve. Slowly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. There was no panic in her movements, only decisiveness and clarity. The gesture was deliberate, a quiet declaration that she would not be silenced or bullied. The crowd, now fully invested in the standoff, watched in awe as Jessica took control of the moment. Her every action, calm and calculated, underscored the values she stood for: accountability, respect, and the courage to confront wrongdoing, no matter the odds. Jessica understood the importance of this moment, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt silenced or dismissed in the face of power. With her phone in hand, Jessica locked eyes with Robert. "You may have the authority of your position," she said, her voice steady and resolute, "but authority without integrity is hollow. And I refuse to let you misuse it. The law isn't just for you. It's for everyone. And today, it will hold us both accountable." It was as though Jessica Adams had anticipated every step of this moment. Her calm demeanor remained unshaken as she spoke, her voice gentle yet unyielding. "You have your rights," she said, her tone sharp as steel, "and I have mine. Let's see on whose side the law stands." With measured movements, Jessica pulled out her phone and quickly dialed a number. When the call connected, her voice was steady, unwavering. "Hello," she began, her words carrying the weight of the situation. "I need support at the Central Supermarket immediately. There's a police officer here who is abusing his authority and threatening people. Please send competent staff right away." Robert Hooks froze, his confident facade beginning to crumble as her words sank in. His eyes widened in disbelief as the realization dawned. The situation was no longer under his control. Around them, the crowd erupted into murmurs, their whispers growing louder. Some who had been filming the scene shifted focus, now calling local authorities to report the incident. Despite the rising chaos, Jessica stood firm, her presence like an anchor amidst the storm. Robert's voice, filled with anger and frustration, cut through the noise as he took a threatening step toward her. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his tone a mixture of fury and disbelief. Jessica met his glare without flinching, her words calm but resolute. "I'm doing what you should have done," she replied, "defending fairness and responsibility." Just as her words settled over the tense crowd, the unmistakable sound of police sirens echoed from outside. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as the crowd parted, making way for the arriving officers. Jessica, her composure unbroken, extended a steady hand, pointing directly at Robert. Her gaze remained locked on him. "This is the person you need to investigate," she said clearly. "His actions have been documented and witnessed by everyone here." Robert's demeanor shifted entirely. The arrogance that had defined him moments earlier vanished, replaced by unease and growing embarrassment. The confidence on his face melted into confusion and anxiety as reality set in. Meanwhile, Jessica stood tall, her calm demeanor unshaken. She knew that this wasn't just about her. It was about upholding justice and ensuring accountability for everyone. The supermarket doors swung open, and a hush fell over the crowd as Mayor Andrew Preston entered. His commanding presence was immediately felt, his sharp eyes surveying the room before settling on Jessica. Each step he took was deliberate, carrying the weight of someone determined to restore order and fairness. Robert, who had been struggling to regain his composure, was now visibly panicked. The arrogance that once defined him had evaporated, leaving only a man grasping for excuses. "Mr. Mayor," he stammered, his voice trembling, "this is just a misunderstanding. I didn't mean anything by it." Enough." Andrew's voice was calm yet authoritative, cutting Robert off mid-sentence. The weight of his words silenced the room. "I'm here because of an urgent call from Major Jessica Adams, a woman I hold in the highest regard. Your actions have been reported and witnessed by many. Don't think you can justify or erase what you've done with empty excuses." Jessica remained composed, though she felt a flicker of relief. She knew that justice was close, but her expression stayed firm, a reminder that the fight wasn't over. Andrew turned to her, his gaze softening slightly. "Major Adams," he said, his tone respectful, "are you unharmed? I hope you haven't been injured in any way. This behavior is unacceptable and will be dealt with thoroughly." Jessica nodded, her voice steady but firm. "I'm fine," she replied, "but this isn't just about me. This is about holding those in power accountable for their actions. If I hadn't stood up today, many others would have continued to be treated unfairly. Andrew's expression hardened as he turned back to Robert. His voice grew cold, each word cutting like a blade. You have abused your authority, insulted a respected military officer, and betrayed the public's trust in the police force. You don't deserve the uniform you're wearing. At that moment, a woman from the crowd stepped forward, handing her phone to Andrew. It contained a video of the entire incident. Andrew watched briefly, his face growing grimmer with each passing second. This behavior is intolerable, he declared, his tone resolute. Turning to the officers who had arrived, he issued a firm order. Strip him of his weapons and insignia immediately. An investigation will be launched, and he will face the appropriate consequences. Robert, now completely devastated, stood speechless as the officers carried out Andrew's orders. The crowd, which had been watching in tense silence, erupted into applause. It was a tribute not only to Jessica's courage, but also to the mayor's decisive action. Jessica, though she hadn't sought recognition, felt a deep sense of relief. Her steadfast resolve had made a difference, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in justice and fairness. As the applause died down, Andrew turned to her, his expression one of respect and gratitude. Major Adams, he said, his voice steady and filled with admiration, this city needs people like you to remind us of responsibility and integrity. On behalf of everyone here, I apologize for what you've endured today. Jessica met his gaze, her voice calm but resolute. Thank you, Mayor, she said. But this isn't about me. It's about ensuring that justice prevails for everyone, no matter their rank or position. Andrew nodded solemnly. And because of you, we're reminded of what that truly means. As the crowd began to disperse, Jessica stood quietly, reflecting on the events that had just unfolded. It wasn't the recognition or the applause that mattered. It was the knowledge that, in this moment, justice had prevailed. And for her, that was victory enough. Jessica Robson stepped out of the supermarket and into the warm sunlight. Her heart felt lighter, but she knew the fight for fairness and accountability was far from over. She had just confronted a man who abused his position of authority, not for herself, but for the countless others who lacked the voice to stand up against such injustice. Inside the supermarket moments earlier, Robert Hooks, the once confident officer, had been stripped of his badge and weapon. The man who had initially oozed arrogance now sat silently in the back of a police car, his face a mask of fear and confusion. The same crowd that had once watched the confrontation now whispered amongst themselves, their critical gazes lingering on him as the vehicle drove away. At the police station, Robert's reckoning began. Investigators pored over the video evidence and witness testimonies that painted a damning picture of his abuse of power. Even Mayor Andrew Preston, a staunch advocate for accountability, weighed in, calling Robert's behavior a stain on the police force. On the same day, Robert was officially suspended and informed that he would face a full investigation. News of the incident spread quickly, fueled by videos of Robert's actions that circulated across social media. Within hours, the footage had gone viral, sparking widespread outrage. People who had experienced unfair treatment at Robert's hands began to come forward, sharing their stories and adding to the growing public disdain for the disgraced officer. Robert's once respected position within the community rapidly crumbled. Colleagues distanced themselves, and friends turned their backs on him. In his small, lonely home, Robert sat with his head in his hands, grappling with the weight of his actions and their consequences. Meanwhile, Jessica Robson continued her life with humility and determination. Though she did not seek recognition, the community hailed her as a hero. Her courage not only brought Robert's actions to light, but also ignited a broader conversation about accountability and ethics in law enforcement. The impact of the incident rippled far and wide. Local police departments faced increased scrutiny, prompting significant reforms in recruitment and training processes. Seminars on ethics and accountability became more common, and Jessica was often invited as a keynote speaker. Standing before hundreds of attendees at these events, Jessica shared her story, not for applause but to emphasize the importance of integrity. Power is meaningful only when it protects, not oppresses, she often said, her words resonating with audiences far beyond her local community. As for Robert, his career came to an unceremonious end. Public trials revealed the full extent of his misconduct, and he faced legal charges, including abuse of power and issuing threats. He served time for his actions, losing not just his freedom but also his honor. The community that once respected him now viewed him with disdain, a stark reminder of the consequences of arrogance and injustice. Jessica, however, continued to rise as a beacon of hope and resilience. Her story inspired grassroots movements advocating for justice and equality. Articles and videos documenting her actions were shared worldwide, encouraging others to confront injustice with courage and integrity. Despite the newfound attention, Jessica remained grounded. She continued serving in the military, upholding the values she had fought so hard to protect. For her, true strength did not lie in power or accolades, but in doing what was right, even in the face of adversity. When Jessica reflected on the events that had unfolded, she felt no regret. Instead, she carried a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing she had stood firm against injustice and inspired others to do the same. For Jessica Robson, the fight for accountability was far from over, but she was ready for whatever lay ahead, armed with integrity, courage, and an unshakable belief in the power of doing what was right. Jessica Robson stepped out into the sunlight, her heart heavy but resolute. Though the ordeal with Robert Hooks had been harrowing, it marked only the beginning of her journey. For Jessica, the confrontation in the supermarket wasn't an isolated incident. It was a wake-up call. The fight for justice, she realized, was a collective struggle, requiring the courage of individuals and the unity of a community. In the days following the incident, Jessica's actions became the talk of the town and beyond. Her steadfastness and bravery inspired profound changes in societal attitudes toward justice and responsibility. Videos of her standing firm against Robert's abuse of power spread like wildfire across social media, sparking widespread outrage and a surge of admiration. People of all walks of life, especially women and marginalized groups, saw in Jessica a symbol of hope, a reminder that standing against injustice was possible, even in the face of adversity. Jessica's courage resonated deeply, particularly with those who had faced discrimination and marginalization. Her story became a rallying cry for equity and accountability. The seminars and workshops she began to lead soon after became platforms for reform. With every speech, Jessica emphasized a simple but powerful truth: justice must be protected, not for one, but for all. Her calls for accountability and systemic change gained traction. Local law enforcement agencies reevaluated their recruitment and training practices, implementing reforms to prioritize ethics and responsibility. Jessica's advocacy extended far beyond the military and law enforcement. She reached out to civilians who felt powerless, urging them to find their voices and stand against any abuse of power. Each of us has the right to say no to oppression. Together, we can make a difference, she often declared. Jessica's story, however, wasn't about fame or accolades. She shied away from the limelight, focusing instead on the tangible impact of her work. She became a role model for younger generations, teaching them not only to face challenges with courage, but to address them with calmness, patience, and unwavering determination. For Jessica, legacy wasn't about awards or recognition. It was about inspiring others to carry the torch of justice and equity. The changes Jessica inspired weren't limited to seminars or speeches. They became part of the community's DNA. Police officers began approaching their roles with renewed humility, aware of the tremendous responsibility they carried. Communities became more engaged in holding those in power accountable, fostering an environment where fairness and respect were non-negotiable. As for Robert Hooks, his fall from grace served as a cautionary tale. Stripped of his badge, weapon, and dignity, he faced not only legal repercussions, but also public ostracism. Those who had suffered under his misuse of power began to come forward, sharing their stories and adding weight to the case against him. In the courtroom, Robert no longer carried the arrogance he once wore so brazenly. Instead, he sat as a shadow of his former self, the consequences of his actions laid bare for all to see. While Robert's downfall was significant, Jessica never saw his punishment as the ultimate goal. Her mission was far greater. She sought systemic change. She worked tirelessly to create a movement, one that encouraged collective action against injustice. Jessica's call to actions campaigns became a beacon of hope, urging individuals to step forward, confront abuses of power, and demand accountability. She believed that the fight for justice wasn't a solitary endeavor, but a shared responsibility. Despite the challenges she faced, Jessica remained steadfast. She understood that the road ahead would be long and fraught with resistance, but she believed in the power of solidarity and the ability of individuals to enact meaningful change. Her determination became the foundation for a powerful movement, a testament to the idea that justice must be defended not just for an individual, but for an entire community. Years later, Jessica Robson's legacy lived on, not just in the changes she inspired in law enforcement and society, but in the countless lives she touched. Her story continued to remind people that courage and integrity, when wielded with purpose, could transform even the most unjust systems. Through her work, Jessica turned a moment of personal injustice into a lifelong mission for equity, leaving behind a brighter, more just world for future generations. Her name became synonymous with justice and resilience, a living reminder that true strength lies in standing up for what is right, even when the odds are against you. And so, with every step Jessica took, she turned her struggle into a powerful movement, proving that justice is not just an ideal but a reality worth fighting for.